Georges St-Pierre was born on May 19, 1981 in a small farm town called St. Isidore in Canada, which only has a population of a few thousand people. He was raised by his parents and grew up with two younger sisters named Miriam and Audrey. His father worked as a flooring and carpet installer, while his mother was employed at a nursing home. Now, before I get started, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. George started karate at the age of 7 because he was inspired by Jean-Claude Van Damme. Also, there was a practical reason of wanting to defend himself against bullies. According to George in Wealth Simple magazine, I started learning karate because I was getting picked on in the schoolyard. So instead of focusing on what the teacher was explaining in front of the class, I was focusing on how I was going to get out of the classroom, get to my locker, pick up my books, and reach the bus before I got beat up by the bullies. Unfortunately, George got bullied because he was an eccentric child. According to his book, The Way of the Fight, he couldn't stop licking his lips. He wrote, "I couldn't stop. I would chew on the collar of my shirt or I'd lick the rim of my lips." Also, he had medical issues with his skin. When George was 8 years old, he had to have a major kidney operation. After that operation, he started having psoriasis issues. Although George had a rough childhood with getting bullied, one could say that he also had a blessed childhood because he discovered two passions. Most people don't even discover one. One of his obsessions was on dinosaurs. According to his mother, the best thing I did for him when he was young is buy him a kid's encyclopedia about dinosaurs. He studied that book and learned it by heart. He fell in love with dinosaurs and their history and asked for more and more and more. George explained his fascination with dinosaurs. He said, "Many people wonder why I'm so interested in dinosaurs and their history. The reason is actually really simple. Dinosaurs were the biggest, most physically powerful creatures that ever walked the face of the earth, yet now they are gone. They ruled the planet for more than 150 million years and then they became extinct. They just disappeared and it fascinates me. Ever since my mom bought me that encyclopedia about dinosaurs, I've been obsessed. How could these unbelievably powerful, fearsome creatures completely disappear?" George's second passion was for martial arts. When George was 16, he got a tattoo on his chest that translates to jiu-jitsu. One day, while he was driving in Montreal, he saw a local MMA fighter named Christophe walking down the street. Christophe ran a local gym and he recently won an MMA bout via a 9-second KO. George wanted this person to be his sensei. So George pulled over his car and slammed on the brakes. He left the vehicle blocking a lane in the street. He sprinted over to Christophe and told him that he badly wanted to learn everything he can about mixed martial arts from him. According to George, Christophe Meadows is the single most important figure in me becoming a mixed martial artist and the only reason why I understood so many years ago that I could become a champion. At this point of St-Pierre's life, athletically, he showcased a lot of promise. After high school and before turning pro as a mixed martial artist, St-Pierre worked as a bouncer at a Montreal nightclub. George also worked as a garbage man for 6 months to pay for his school fees. His school fees were from his enrollment in college where he briefly studied kinesiology. At this stage in St-Pierre's life, he decided to leave many things behind. According to his book, The Way of the Fight, he wrote, "I constantly heard Christophe's words whispered in my ear, and it triggered a reaction inside of me, and I realized this is what I want to do. I want to become a champion in the world of mixed martial arts." And then all of my energy, everything I had inside of me went towards achieving that unique goal. I wasn't making sacrifices anymore, I was making decisions. Train instead of party, work instead of play, perfect practice instead of casual repetition. In January of 2004, all those decisions translated into Georges St-Pierre making his UFC debut. His debut was against Karo Parisyan at UFC 46. St-Pierre said he fought under contract terms of $3,000 to show and $3,000 to win. George dominated that fight with his wrestling top control, ground and pound, and submission defense. In his next fight, he got the only first-round knockout in his UFC career. So basically, George burst onto the UFC scene going 2-0, winning both matches in impressive fashion. As what was common in the early 2000s in the UFC, 1 or 2 good wins was all you needed to get a title shot. At 23 years and 5 months old, George got his first title shot. If St-Pierre would have won this fight, he would have set the record for the youngest person in UFC history to win a championship within the organization. But history wasn't so kind to him, and instead John Jones got the record at 23 years and 8 months old. For his first title fight against Matt Hughes, St-Pierre said he made $9,000 to show. In George's book, The Way of the Fight, he commented on this matchup. He said, "Up until that point, I'd been fighting part-time because I had to make money to pay for rent and my car. I had no training partners and few coaches. George also said in interviews that Matt Hughes was his idol at the time and that he was in awe of him. He cited mental immaturity as the main culprit for his defeat. That was on display when he tapped to an armbar with fractions of a second left in the round. This ended up being St-Pierre's only submission loss in his MMA career. It was also the last time he would feel inferior going into a fight. As George did best, he never let a defeat go to waste. He came back more motivated and better than ever to get another title shot. The hip strength he demonstrated on Trigg when thwarting off a takedown and the explosive double leg he landed on Shirk were the best application of those techniques I've seen. After the Shirk fight, George had one of his iconic post-fight speeches. He got on his knees and begged the UFC brass for another title shot. The most iconic post-fight speech he had was telling Hughes he was not impressed with his performance after Matt outlasted BJ Penn in a comeback victory.
I'm very glad you won that fight, Matt, but I'm not impressed by your performance.
In facing off against Hughes for the second time, George was able to beat his former idol and exact his revenge. But his first reign as champion didn't last long. In George's first title defense, he lost via TKO to Matt Serra. In an article with Yahoo Sports, St-Pierre brought up personal problems leading up to his loss and said that he came in with a knee injury. And leading up to the fight, St-Pierre had a teenage cousin he was close with die in an auto accident, and his father was having serious health issues. But as I stated earlier, George does not let any loss go to waste. In his book, he cited a few reasons that tactically lost him the fight. One was punching down to strike on a shorter opponent. Here is how Georges St-Pierre put it. The eyes determine the punching angle. Another very key element in a successful fight. I got to learn that from an unsuccessful fight against Matt Serra. Serra has a very strong overhand right punch. When I fought him the first time, I fought tall, and that was a bad idea. When you fight tall against a shorter opponent with a strong right punch, you open yourself and the entire left flank of your head. Although George gained some valuable knowledge from this loss, psychologically he did not take it very well. He was embarrassed and ashamed. Getting the championship belt was the highest of the highs, and losing it was the lowest of the lows. In George's book, he said for weeks and months after this fight, all he could think about was revenge. Serra wouldn't leave my thoughts. He haunted me for a long time, George said. A friend of George said that these thoughts were weighing him down like carrying a brick everywhere he went. His buddy proposed a solution, which was to actually carry a real brick, write Serra's name on it, and bring it everywhere with him. This way he would have a physical representation of those thoughts in the form of a brick that would help him realize the futility of carrying it around. According to George, I literally got the brick and wrote down his name. I took it with me for car rides to the gym. I carried it in my bag. When I went to bed, I placed it on the desk just outside my door so that the moment I walked out of my room in the morning, I'd see it and be reminded of it. George had this brick for months. He finally discarded it when he no longer obsessed over that loss. Similar to the aftermath from the Matt Hughes loss, George returned from the Matt Serra fight looking better than ever. He eventually got his revenge over Serra. He regained the title and never lost it. Also, he got paid quite handsomely after getting his belt back. After the John Fitch fight, he finally made his first million. In an interview with GQ, he said that the first thing he did with that $1 million was take $50K and pay off his parents' mortgage. He also helped his sister pay for her master's degree. Luckily for George, he made a lot more after that first million. On March 27, 2014, St-Pierre announced that he had torn his left ACL while training, further delaying a potential return to fighting. I believe this ACL injury affected his movement. I noticed his takedown entries slowed down considerably from the Condit fight on. Also, burnout was an issue at this point in his career, mainly due to the amount of stress he dealt with leading up to his fights. In my opinion, GSP was at his peak in the second Koscheck fight. Even though St-Pierre was dealing with injuries, burnout, and was arguably no longer in his prime, he found a way to win his last 13 UFC contests. One of his toughest matchups was against Johnny Hendricks. Hendricks was the only guy that ever out-muscled GSP. After beating Hendricks through a controversial decision, George announced he was going to take a prolonged break. St-Pierre walked away after the Hendricks fight because he felt disgusted with the performance-enhancing drug problem in the UFC, according to MMA Junkie. When the UFC finally instituted an anti-doping agency in USADA, Georges St-Pierre was willing to return for any matchup that would elevate his legacy. That matchup was for the UFC Middleweight Championship against Michael Bisping. It took St-Pierre 4 years after the Hendricks fight to make his return. for the fight with Michael Bisping, with the pay-per-views, the sponsorship, and all that, George said he made about $10 million. That $10 million was well earned because it set a record for the Canadian pay-per-view market, surpassing the Floyd Mayweather vs. Conor McGregor boxing match from August of 2017. On December 7, 2017, St-Pierre vacated the UFC middleweight title after 34 days of holding it. On February 21, 2019, St-Pierre announced his retirement from MMA. St-Pierre is widely regarded as the best mixed martial artist of all time. His MMA resume certainly warrants that claim. For one, he never lost a rematch. He went 5-0 in rematches. He never lost a decision in his MMA career, going 12-0 in the UFC when a fight went the distance. In fact, he never lost when the fight went past the first round. At one point, he won 30 straight rounds in the UFC that spanned from the first Koscheck fight to the Jake Shields fight. He still holds a record of 9 UFC welterweight championship title defenses. As of this recording, he is one of 24 fighters to be inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame. On June 9, 2021, St. Isidore honored St-Pierre with unveiling a life-size 136-kilogram bronze statue of St-Pierre. But accolades aside, what specifically about Georges St-Pierre's fighting skills or training methods made him special? One thing that stands out to me was how frequently he used the Superman punch. He also had a Superman jab variation too. This technique didn't knock anyone out, but served as a flashy way to score points from the judges. Also, how often are training partners using this technique? Therefore, opponents don't encounter a Superman punch in training as frequently as they would any other strike. So the Superman punch was flashy and was hard for opponents to react to, and nobody threw it as often or as fast as St-Pierre. Another part of St-Pierre's game was his self-proclaimed shootbox style. According to John Danaher, in Georges St-Pierre's book, shootbox has been perhaps the single most important ingredient in the development of Georges' success as a mixed martial artist. Shootbox is Georges' own term. It refers to the act of integrating striking skills with takedown skills. It enables you to take an opponent away from his strengths and toward his weaknesses. Georges is without question the greatest shootboxer in the history of mixed martial arts. So, George had great shootbox skills and utilized the Superman punch more effectively than anyone else, but that doesn't sum up how special he was. He was great at catching kicks. His takedown defense was legendary for the majority of his career. His ability to cover distance was second to none. By that, I mean he could move forward into striking range and back to outside of striking range faster than any welterweight during his reign. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't also mention his jab. He broke Koscheck's orbital with a jab. That fight represents one of the best displays of a jab that I have seen in an MMA contest. His mental game is also what set him apart from the rest of his competition. St-Pierre would always look for competitive advantages, and I don't mean performance-enhancing drugs. Here's a quote from his book that sums up what I mean. "My mindset must be open to improvements at all times from all sources." One improvement that his coach Firas helped him embark upon was gymnastics training. According to St-Pierre, "The truth is that I believe gymnasts are the best athletes in the world. I've been training at it for years now, but I still can't do a fraction of what the good ones are able to do. The way they move and their ability to generate power from all kinds of different positions is simply amazing. It blows me away. Gymnasts can produce power from the most awkward positions." George viewed gymnastics training as a way to gain a competitive advantage in MMA. And George still trains today because he views it as an advantage in its everyday life. It is difficult to find what else George does in his everyday life because he does a good job of concealing it. But here's what I was able to uncover. He has never been married. According to a Quebec news report, dans les coulisses, he has a son named Liam, who is around 7 years old, but I don't know the legitimacy of the news agency or that report. According to Celebrity Net Worth, St-Pierre is worth $30 million. Most of that has come from his MMA career. He's done very well to maintain his wealth during his retirement from MMA. His biggest success in his post-MMA career is in obtaining a role in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Most notably, he starred as the supervillain mercenary combatant Batroc, the Leaper, in Captain America the Winter Soldier, and played that same character in 3 episodes of the first season of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Georges St-Pierre has been taking acting seriously. For a period of time, he was taking audition classes, theater classes, and camera classes. In an article in Wealth Simple magazine, he said, "I trained for acting like I did in my professional fighting. I always try to get out of my comfort zone. I've trained in drama, in comedy, and romance. I'm not always training to be an action figure." This was him indicating that he's more than capable of taking on another acting role in a completely different genre. As of this writing, IMDb doesn't show any upcoming acting roles for him. Besides acting, St-Pierre leverages his social media following to earn money. His Twitter account, which has 2 million followers, is mostly used to get people to sign up to Bet99 Sportsbook through an affiliate link. His Instagram account, which has 3.5 million followers, has a lot more variety of content, but is still mostly used as a promotional tool. One thing he promotes on that platform is the fitness app True Connect. St-Pierre has 13 MMA-style workouts on that app, and the app makes money by charging $13 a month. Another common thing he promotes on Instagram is a product called Base Blocks. Base Blocks is an at-home gym designed to help people do gymnastic-style workouts at home. I'm not sure if he designed this himself or if this is a business that he owns. As for MMA-related news with St-Pierre, he got hired on as an analyst for the French-language UFC broadcast, providing commentary in studio, airing on Réseau des Sports. In May of 2021, Oscar de la Hoya was in talks with St-Pierre's team to book a legend versus legend fight. The only issue was that GSP was still under contract with the UFC, and Dana White was unwilling to sign off on that matchup. In June 2021, St-Pierre mentioned in an interview with Sports Illustrated he'd be interested in an exhibition fight or a novelty fight for charity. In that same interview, he mentioned the Karate Combat League, which he is listed as an ambassador for on their website. George said, "I'm very happy to be a part of Karate Combat. I first started martial arts by practicing karate. That was a passion, which turned into my love for mixed martial arts. This is a very dynamic sport, and the show is going to be spectacular." Georges St-Pierre has made a huge impact on the sport of mixed martial arts, and now he's looking to help popularize karate. Who knows where he would be at if he had not discovered karate. What we do know is that Georges St-Pierre's story has proven that a kid from a small Canadian farm town can grow up to be a mixed martial arts champion in the UFC, that a mixed martial artist can end his career on top, and that a person can successfully transition from an MMA fighter to a villainous character in a superhero franchise.